In Unit 7, we'll be learning about triangle congruence. We're going to be working on our foldable. The first part of the foldable says corresponding parts of congruent polygons. So open it up, and it will look like this. This first part is just a definition. If polygons are congruent, of course you can write out congruent. I prefer symbols. So if polygons are congruent, corresponding sides and angles, again you could always write that out, are congruent. So on the left is our first example, and it says if triangle ABC is congruent to triangle DEF, then we're going to write a bunch of congruent statements. So first we're going to talk about all the angles. You don't even necessarily need the pictures to figure out what angles corresponds to which angles. The reason they're written ABC and DEF is for a reason. A is first on the left one and D is first on the right one. Those are the angles that are congruent. So angle A is congruent to angle D. And we make little arches to show congruence of angles. Next is angle B is congruent with angle E. Angle B is congruent with angle E. And since we already used one arch mark, we want to use two arch marks for this one. So angle B is congruent with angle E. And the last angle we need to talk about is angle C and angle F. Angle C is congruent to angle F with three arch marks. Now remember, most of the time our homeworks, or I guess since we're doing flipped classrooms, will now be in classwork, will be in black and white. So that's why we need to do these arch marks. Yes, you can clearly see which angles are congruent because I'm using different colors, but in class it will all be in black and white. So that's how you will know the difference, is by the arch marks. So we just classified all the different angles. Now we're going to have to classify all the sides. We can do that with just the written triangle part. So AB are the first two letters, is congruent to DE, which is the first two letters of the second triangle. So side AB is congruent to side DE. And whenever we see it on pictures, we use things called tick marks to show congruence. So for this one, we will use one tick mark. Next we have BC is congruent to EF. BC is congruent to EF. Again, we will show that with tick marks. And lastly, the last side, since the letters aren't next to each other, this will be the place that you will mess up. So make sure that you pay attention. You have to do the first and last letter to come up with the last side. So AC is congruent to DF. AC is congruent to DF. We'll mark that with three tick marks. So now we're done with the left example. We can move on to the right one. It says if polygon DEFG is congruent to polygon LMNO, then. So we're going to list all the angles that are congruent and all the sides that are congruent as well. Now in this one we're not given pictures, so we're just going to have to deal with the letters. Let's do angles first. Angle D is congruent to angle L. Next, angle E is congruent to angle M. Angle F is congruent to angle N. And lastly, angle G is congruent to angle O. Now we need to talk about all the different sides. So we have DE are the first two letters and LM are the first two letters of the right polygon. So side DE is congruent to side LM. Side EF is congruent to MN. That's the bell to get out of school today on Friday, so please ignore that. Angle FG is congruent, side FG is congruent to side NO. And lastly, you got to connect the first and last letters. So DG is congruent to LO. Now we're done with that one. Alright, now we're going to name these two triangles 4 different ways. And whatever way that you name the left triangle, you have to name the right triangle the same way. Now what that means is, pay attention to the arches. We're going to go in the order of the arches. So the one with 1 arch is C, the one with 2 arches is A, and the one with 3 arches is T. So we're going to go from 1 arch to 2 arches to 3 arches. So that means that we went from C to A to T. So triangle CAT is congruent to triangle. On this one we're going to have to go from 1 arch to 3 arches. So 1 to 2 to 3. So IFT. I'm going to erase these arrows. They're just there to show you how I got the answers. Otherwise, this would get very confusing very quickly. Now we're going to go from 2 arches to 3 arches to 1 arch. So triangle ATC is congruent to triangle. We go from 2 to 3 to 1. So FTI. Next we will do triangle. Oh, let me erase the green. Oops. Triangle TCA. So from 3 to 1 to 2. So TCA is congruent to triangle TIF. Now the very last way, we've been going, what is this way? Counterclockwise. Now we're going to try to go clockwise. So instead of going from 1 to 2, we're going to go from 1 to 3. So triangle CTA. Is congruent to triangle ITF. And those are 4 different ways that you can write those 2 triangles. Lastly, we just need to fill in some blanks. two polygons are congruent if and only if their sides and angles are congruent. They are the same size and the same shape. And that concludes our first flap of our first foldable. The homework that goes along with this is the day 1 homework, so that's pages 2 and 3 out of your packet.